Weeks later, as graduation neared, Nora found herself standing on the same stage where she once debated as a fraud. Only this time, she spoke as herself. Her closing line silenced the hall. We all have versions of ourselves we're told to bury. But sometimes, the bravest thing we can do is dig them back up and let them live. As applause filled the auditorium, she noticed someone in the crowd, her father, clapping with tears streaming down his face. Ava sent her a postcard from abroad the next week. You didn't just find yourself, Nora. You made yourself. That's rarer and stronger. She smiled. And though the world would keep calling her the scholarship girl, Nora knew the truth. The girl she was never meant to be had finally come home. It had been almost a year since Nora Quinn walked across the Ridgeview graduation stage, her head held high. Now 19, she was a freshman at Kingsborough University, studying social psychology and working part-time in the campus counseling office. Most days were quiet, filled with lectures, coffee, and the slow rhythm of starting over. But occasionally, an email would arrive from a stranger. I heard your story online. I think I'm living it now. Some messages were brief, others pages long. Nora read every one. She never expected her life to become anyone's inspiration, but she answered each message with patience and truth. You're not broken. You're just becoming. One afternoon, her supervisor asked her to speak at an orientation panel for scholarship students. Tell them about your journey, the woman said kindly. Nora hesitated. You really think they'll want to hear it? The answer came with a smile. I think one of them needs to. She had no idea how right that would be. Among the new scholarship class sat a thin, nervous student with dark curls that hid his eyes. His name was Liam Hart. He was there on the same Eleanor Chase Foundation scholarship that had once rewritten Nora's fate. When Nora finished speaking, the auditorium applauded politely. But Liam stayed seated, frozen, staring at her as if he'd seen a ghost. Afterward, he found her in the hallway. You're Nora Quinn, he said breathlessly. The one who you used to be, she raised her hand gently. You don't have to finish that sentence. He looked down. I think I'm where you were. Something in his voice, the tremor, the fear, brought back every sleepless night she'd ever spent pretending to be someone else. They met again later that week, in the campus greenhouse. The air smelled of mint and damp soil, the same scent that had once sheltered her secret. Liam confessed everything. He'd been accepted to Kingsborough under a female identity, Leah Hart, because his parents refused to pay for his tuition otherwise. They said this school only invests in girls, he said bitterly. So I became one. Nora listened in silence. When he finally looked up, she said softly. You think this is about lying? It's not. It's about surviving. But you can't survive forever by disappearing. Liam's eyes glistened. Then what do I do? Let's find a way for you to live as both, she replied. Until you're ready to be whole. That was the beginning of the legacy. Weeks passed. Nora guided Liam through the same fragile balancing act she'd once endured, clothing choices, voice training, mannerisms that fooled professors and classmates. But something about him was different. He wasn't pretending with fear, he was pretending with anger. One night, Liam slammed his books shut. You don't get it, Nora. You had people who accepted you. I have no one. Nora flinched. That's not true. You have me. He looked up sharply, tears pooling. Then why does it still feel like I'm losing myself? That question cut through her composure. Because she remembered exactly when she'd felt the same, the night she realized she didn't want to go back to being Noah Quinn. You're scared of what happens if the mask becomes real, she said softly. So was I. But sometimes, the mask isn't hiding you. It's protecting you until you're ready. Liam said nothing. But the next day, he showed up at her office wearing a soft lavender sweater and a tentative smile. Maybe I'll keep the name Leah for now, he murmured. For the first time, Nora didn't see her past, she saw her reflection in someone else's becoming. Just when things began to settle, an official letter arrived from the Eleanor Chase Foundation. It announced an identity verification review for all current scholars. Liam panicked. "They'll find out, Nora. I'll lose everything." Nora took a deep breath. "Not if we face them first." She called the foundation's director, an older woman named Meredith Chase, the founder's daughter. "I want to meet," Nora said firmly. "There's something you need to hear." The following week, Nora and Liam sat across from Meredith in a sunlit office overlooking the city. Nora told her everything, her own story, Liam's situation, and how the system's narrow rules forced students to choose between education and authenticity. When she finished, Meredith was silent for a long time. Then she said, "You're suggesting we rewrite the scholarship's founding clause?" Nora nodded. "Yes. Make it inclusive. Make it real." Meredith exhaled. "Do you have any idea how much tradition you're asking me to break?" Nora smiled faintly. "Tradition broke me once. Maybe it's time to return the favor." 2 weeks later, a press statement went public. The Eleanor Chase Foundation announces an updated scholarship policy open to all students demonstrating courage and self-discovery, regardless of gender identity. Liam read it aloud, voice shaking. "You did it." Nora shook her head. "We did." That night, she walked alone through the campus garden. The greenhouse lights glowed softly in the distance. Her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "You changed the rules, Ms. Quinn. But change always comes with a price. No sender. No trace." Just those words. Her fingers went cold. Because she recognized that phrasing. It was exactly what Noel Quinn, her father's mysterious emissary, had said months ago. He was back. The next morning, Nora found an envelope slipped under her dorm door. Inside lay an old photograph, Ridgeview's greenhouse. On the back, a handwritten note. "New semester. New mask. Same secret." As she stared at it, the faint sound of footsteps echoed in the hall, slow, deliberate, familiar. Nora turned toward the door, heart pounding, half afraid, half curious. The knob turned. And before the frame filled with light, the screen went black. It had been 3 days since the envelope appeared under Nora's dorm door. 3 days of sleepless nights. 3 days of silence from the unknown sender. The photo haunted her, that image of the Ridgeview greenhouse, where her transformation had begun. The handwriting on the back was unmistakable, slanted, deliberate, masculine. New semester. New mask. Same secret. Whoever sent it knew too much. And worse, the timing was impossible to ignore. The university had just appointed a new assistant director of scholarship affairs. A young, ambitious administrator transferred from Ridgeview Academy itself. His name? Noel Ashcroft. Nora froze when she read the memo. "Noel," she whispered. The same first name as her father's so-called emissary. Could it be the same man? Nora decided to confront him. She waited outside the foundation's office after hours, watching the hallway glow dim under amber light. When the door finally opened, she saw him, tall, dark hair slicked back, a smile too polished to be real. "Noel Ashcroft," she said softly. He looked up, pretending surprise. "Miss Quinn, right? The famous scholarship reformer." Her pulse spiked. "We've met before." He tilted his head, feigning innocence. "Have we?" "Yes," she said firmly. "At Ridgeview. You worked for my father." For a second, something flickered behind his eyes, recognition, irritation, memory. Then he smiled again. "You must be mistaken. I've never met your father." But Nora saw the small detail he hadn't covered, the cufflinks on his sleeves. Silver, engraved with the initials RQ. Her father's. Over the next week, Noel made his presence felt. He sat in on scholarship meetings. He praised Nora publicly, but in private, his words were sharper. "You've built quite the reputation," he said one afternoon, his tone smooth as glass. But reputations are fragile things. Especially when they're built on selective truths. She folded her arms. "Are you threatening me?" "Of course not," he smiled. "I'm just saying, some people like to know who they're really funding." That night, she found a new email in her inbox. Subject: The Truth Always Returns. Attachment: Ridgeview student files, including hers. Someone had copied the original records, including her enrollment under Noah Quinn. Her heart pounded. If those files reached the foundation board, they could revoke her scholarship and discredit the entire reform she'd built. But she wasn't the same scared student she used to be. This time, she wasn't going to hide. Nora went digging. Through foundation directories, staff databases, old Ridgeview staff records. And that's when she found it. Noel Ashcroft didn't exist 3 years ago. His personnel file was manufactured, dates mismatched, references blank. He wasn't a new administrator. He was a plant. She arranged a meeting under false pretenses, claiming she had documents for him to review. When he arrived, she had a voice recorder running. "I know you're not who you say you are," she said coldly. He chuckled. "Neither are you." His words cut sharper than expected. "I worked for your father, yes," he admitted finally, leaning back in his chair. "But not anymore. He doesn't control me. I came here for something he couldn't finish." Nora frowned. "What do you want from me?" His expression darkened. "The truth, Nora. The truth you buried in that greenhouse. The one you keep pretending isn't there." "What truth?" she demanded. He smiled. "The experiment." The word hit like a stone through glass. "What are you talking about?" she whispered. He pulled out a small, worn notebook, the same kind her mother used to keep when tracking medical forms during her makeover year. But this wasn't hers. "This," he said, "was your father's research journal. Ridgeview wasn't just an academy, it was part of a behavioral study. Your transformation was documented, observed, funded." Nora's mind reeled. "You're lying." "Am I?" He opened a page. Written in her father's handwriting. Subject: DQ01. Gender assimilation adaptation proceeding beyond expected thresholds. Emotional stabilization, successful. Identity merging predicted. She stepped back, her breath shaking. Her father hadn't just wanted to save her education, he'd turned her life into a psychological experiment. Every sleepless night, every breakdown, every encouragement from her mother, it had all been part of it. Her voice cracked. "Why show me this now?" "Because the funding that paid for your scholarship," Noel said quietly, "is coming back online. And they want to restart the program, with new students." Nora stared at him. "You mean?" "Yes," Noel said. "They want you to endorse it. Publicly. As proof that it worked." Her stomach turned. "You think I'd ever?" He raised a hand. "You don't have a choice. If you refuse, your father's files go public. Every note, every dosage, every secret meeting. They'll see how much of your self-discovery was manufactured." The walls felt like they were closing in. But then something inside her clicked. She straightened, her voice calm but cutting. "You think exposure will destroy me? Maybe once it would have. But not now. Because I'm not ashamed of who I became, even if the road was ugly." Noel's confident mask faltered for the first time. She leaned in. "You call it an experiment. I call it evolution. You can tell your investors whatever you want, I'm ending it." She grabbed the notebook and walked out. The next morning, Nora filed an official report to the foundation board, attaching every piece of evidence Noel had shown her and naming him as the source. By noon, security escorted him out of the building. The board initiated an investigation into the old Ridgeview program. That evening, Nora stood in front of the mirror, the same kind that once reflected Noah Quinn's confusion, fear, and doubt. Now, she saw something else. Not a mask. Not a disguise. A face that had endured, adapted, survived. She whispered to her reflection, voice steady. They turned me into their project. But I became my own proof. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You may have stopped him. But the project was never just his. The screen flickered, then went black. It had been a week since Noel Ashcroft's removal from the foundation. Nora should have felt safe. She wasn't. Her phone still buzzed at 3 a.m. every night, same message, same sender ID blocked. You may have stopped him. But the project was never just his. She tried tracing the signal once, but the message originated from a private encrypted relay. Whoever was sending them knew how to hide. One morning, her mentor from the university's counseling center, Dr. Eileen Torres, noticed her exhaustion. You're running yourself into the ground, she said gently. You've done enough saving for a lifetime. Nora smiled weakly. That's the thing about saving people, Eileen. It never ends, it just changes form. That same afternoon, a sealed envelope arrived in her campus mailbox. Inside, a faded photo of a child in a hospital gown, a barcode bracelet around her wrist. Written on the back. Prototype 01. Ridgeview Genesis Trial. Codename EVE. The child's eyes were familiar. Too familiar. It was her. Nora's hands trembled as she searched the Ridgeview archives again. Hidden beneath old student databases, she found a buried file labeled Project EVE Experimental Verification of Emotional Evolution. Inside the encrypted pages. Subject DQ01, Female Assimilation Success, 97%. Subsequent candidate trials scheduled under mentorship model. Phase 2, Replication under academic conditioning environments. Her breath caught. They weren't just experimenting on her. They were replicating her. And the worst part, the listed locations weren't just Ridgeview. There were 6 schools across 3 states. All private institutions. All funded by the Eleanor Chase Foundation. Nora grabbed her coat and ran to the foundation office. Meredith Chase, the same woman who had helped her rewrite the scholarship clause, looked up as she burst in. Nora, what's wrong? You told me you didn't know about my father's experiment, Nora said, voice shaking. You were funding it. Meredith's face was drained of color. That's not true. Nora threw the file on her desk. Then explain this. Meredith stared at the pages for a long time before whispering, my mother started the foundation to help young women find opportunity. But years later, corporate donors took over. They rebranded the education grants as psychological studies. I shut it down when I found out. Then who restarted it? Nora asked. Meredith's answer came like a whisper of dread. Someone inside the university. Nora's mind raced. Who had access to the foundation's systems, the archives, the encrypted student records? Only faculty and research partners. Including Dr. Eileen Torres. Her mentor. The woman she trusted most. That evening, Nora visited Eileen's office. The door was open, lights dim, papers scattered across the desk. On top of the pile lay a printed document stamped, confidential, Phase 2 participant data. Her name was at the top. And underneath, Liam Hart. Looking for something? Nora turned. Dr. Torres stood in the doorway, calm, expression unreadable. Why? Nora whispered. Why are you doing this? Eileen sighed. Because I believe in it. You of all people should understand, Project EVE changes lives. By lying to them? By using them? By giving them what they secretly need, Eileen replied. You found yourself through the process. So did many others. We're not forcing identity. We're revealing it. Nora's voice shook. You don't get to decide who people are. Dr. Torres smiled faintly. Neither do they, not until they see it. Before Nora could speak, the computer behind Eileen beeped. A database opened automatically, lines of names scrolling across the screen. Each one labeled EVE subject candidate. Each one with a photo. Students. All under the age of 18. Ridgeview. Briarwell. St. Minerva's. And at the very top, Liam Hart, active, phase 2. Nora's chest constricted. He doesn't know? Eileen tilted her head. He will. Eventually. Nora lunged for the keyboard, yanking the power cord out of the wall. No. It ends now. Eileen stepped closer. If you stop this, Nora, you're destroying the only proof that what you became was real. Nora turned to face her, tears in her eyes. I don't need proof. I am the proof. She walked out, trembling, the severed cable still in her hand. Nora spent the next 2 nights hacking into every affiliated database she could reach, using the credentials she'd learned during her reform work. When she finally breached the Foundation's cloud network, she saw it, thousands of encrypted files, labeled EVE. Every subject. Every psychological log. Every manipulated intervention. She hesitated for only a second, then whispered. No more experiments. And with one keystroke, she executed a purge. Lines of code flashed red. Files collapsed, fragments vanishing into digital dust. Then the screen flickered, and a message appeared. Deletion confirmed. But you can't erase evolution. The system shut down. Nora sat in silence, surrounded by the hum of servers cooling down. For the first time, she wasn't shaking from fear, but from release. A week later, she received a package in the mail. No name. No return address. Inside, a USB drive, labeled EVE Founders Archive. Her hand trembled as she plugged it in. A video began to play, her father, seated beside Dr. Torres, and a third figure, Meredith Chase's late mother, Eleanor herself. Phase 1 was successful, her father said. The subject demonstrates full emotional adaptation and cognitive re-identification. We call her Eve. Her father looked directly into the camera. If you're watching this, Nora, then you've become what we predicted, self-sustaining, self-aware, and uncontrollable. Congratulations. You were never the subject. You were the blueprint. The screen went black. Nora stared at her reflection in the monitor. Her breath shallow, her world tilting. Blueprint. Not a subject. The origin. That night, Nora walked through the empty campus greenhouse, the same sanctuary that once birthed her transformation. She looked at her reflection in the glass and whispered. You made me do your experiment. But I turned it into evolution. And now, I'll rewrite the design. She pulled the USB drive from her pocket, snapped it in half, and let the pieces fall into the soil. As the lights flickered above her, she finally understood, her story wasn't about surviving their experiment. It was about ending it, for everyone. Outside, thunder rumbled across the horizon. And in the shadows, a silhouette watched her, recording. For the first time in years, Nora stopped running. Project EVE was over. The servers wiped. The records were destroyed. The Foundation reorganized under emergency oversight. And yet, she couldn't shake one sentence from that final video. You were never the subject. You were the blueprint. Blueprint. The word haunted her. She replayed it again and again in her mind until it became more than a metaphor, it felt like a diagnosis. Nora had always believed her transformation was psychological, a journey of acceptance and emotional rebirth. But if her father's message was literal, if something deeper had been engineered, then every feeling she'd called her own might have been planted. That thought was unbearable. So she made a decision to find out what she really was, once and for all.